Good morning to everyone. My name is Tandlich. I am going to be chairing today's proceedings. My role here will be to keep everyone to time, like Jean-Paul did really well yesterday, but also to try and introduce today's session. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for the second day of the TIEMS 2021 annual conference, which is taking place by hosting from the French chapter, as pointed out yesterday. Also in the virtual space, we are hosted by Capacity Building International. So thank you for all the hard work that the organizers have put in for facilitating us to meet under such challenging conditions. You might have picked up that the country where I am sitting, which is South Africa, has recently detected a new variant of COVID-19, which has caused consternation worldwide, mainly due to the fact that it is heavily mutated and it's very different from the other variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which we have seen. The Omicron itself has provided a good example how technology can be used in emergency management and actually helps us manage large-scale emergencies and also pandemics, which are disasters in their own nature. The technology that I mean specifically in relation to Omicron was the genomic capacity and genomic sequencing capacity that South African scientists have used to detect the new virus variant. But the genomics and the healthcare technology, which has been at the forefront of the news and the emergency management fraternities considering of the COVID-19 virus, is only one example of how technology can be used in a fluctuating and highly fluid situation such as emergencies can become. Today's talks will be focused on talking about systems in the areas of IT and beyond that can be used to allow for decision support and also that allow us to deal with emergencies and disasters as they arise. To initiate the discussion today, we will stick to the same format as happened yesterday, which means all our speakers will present in the session, and then at the end of time, at the end of the session after the third presentation of the first session of today, which is session 4, emergency management technology, we will then allow for questions to take place. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the QA box, which you will find at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or you can also type them into the chat. They will be these two platforms will then be monitored, and at the end of the session, I will allow for the questions to be answered by the relevant speakers. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. It is a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, who is Professor Vinod Chandra Menon from India. Let me quickly just go through some CV particulars for our first distinguished speaker, and after that I will hand over the floor to Professor Menon. Professor Vinod Chandra Menon is an alumnus of Kerala University and of Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He has over 37 years of working experience, which more than 2.5 decades were in the fields of disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and related public policy analysis. He has worked as a professor in disaster management at the Yeshwantrao Chavan Academy of Development Administration in Pune, in India. He has also worked for organizations such as UNICEF in New Delhi in the Country Office for India. In 2005, he was nominated by the Prime Minister of India as a founding member of the National Disaster Management Authority in the Government of India structures as an apex authority to deal with disaster management and disaster risk reduction on the territory of India. He was in this capacity had the status of a Union Minister of State in the Government of India. He worked in this capacity from the 28th of September 2005 until the 27th of September of 2010. He currently serves on the governing boards of several organizations which work and focus on resilience building, emergency preparedness, and Response. He's also one of the co-founders of the SPHERE chapter in India. He was a member of the High-Powered Committee on Disaster Management, which was established by the government of India back in 1999. Currently, he's a member of the peer committee or peer review committee for technological preparedness to deal with national disruptions, which have been established by the Indian National Academy of Engineering. Further to this, Professor Menon is also a senior advisor and mentor at the International Institute for Information Technology in Pune, India. He's currently also works as an independent consultant in the fields of disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and public policy analysis. He's been a consultant for the United Nations Development Programme, UNICEF, UNESCAP, World Bank, Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery, the Asian Development Bank, to name a few. Professor Menon has been invited to address several international conferences on disaster management and resilience building. He's also an extensively published author. He has co-edited a book on humanitarian logistics, which was published by Springer. And in 2010, Professor Menon was a recipient of the Scotch Challenger Award for his contribution to the field of disaster management. Okay, with this, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and hand over the floor to Professor Menon.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, to be speaking on information technology-enabled tools for strengthening multi-hazard preparedness and emergency response. So actually, this conference, the annual conference of TIEMS, is being hosted by the Paris, by the French chapter of TIEMS. And I'm very happy to have this opportunity to make this presentation on information technology-enabled tools. And I would like to basically go through a very brief overview on the critical gaps in multi-hazard preparedness and response, and look at the role of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and blockchain applications in multi-hazard preparedness and response, and also look at big data analytics and information technology applications like IoT, the Internet of Things, in multi-hazard preparedness and response, and also consider an overview of robotics, embedded systems, and drones in multi-hazard preparedness and response, and also look at geoinformatics, scenario analysis, and modeling in multi-hazard preparedness and response, and also examine the international collaborations currently in terms of working together. If you really look at the IT applications for effective disaster management, we see that information technology applications have revolutionized the field of disaster management and emergency management in the recent past, especially during the global pandemic. If power supply is disrupted during disasters like hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, etc., how will first responders, NGOs, donors, and government officials be able to overcome the constraint of lack of access to power? And this we see in many disasters like floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, landslides, etc. So we see that social sensing is offering a great solution through the computing power being utilized, and very passive sensors in mobile phones, routers, and other hardware. And can we really look at decentralized networks of local communities accessing the networks parked on cloud platforms? And can a geo-referenced network ping enabled phones, sensors, and also track exact locations of people in distress? This is something which we have been seeing more often in many countries which are affected by disasters. And that is also helped by large number of mobile applications which are actually helping to track people in disaster situations, especially people who are marooned in floods. So if you really look at the ICT ecosystem in the field of emergency management and disaster management, we see that artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, robotics, and blockchain applications are becoming increasingly popular. And we see the role of geoinformatics, which is the role of geographical information systems, satellite imagery, and remote sensing, scenario analysis and modeling, which is being increasingly used, and the IoT, which is the Internet of Things, which is coming up as one of the most popular applications. And we also see the increasing role of UAVs and drones. And we see also that in remote areas, UAVs and drones have been used also to dispatch and deliver vaccines in areas where access is actually becoming difficult. And we also have sensors and Doppler radars and various other applications, also hardware interfaces, which are actually possible through embedded systems. Now, if you look at the role of mobile devices, and we see that according to Statista, the number of wireless devices which are connected has increased worldwide from 29%, that is 14.96 billion in 2019 to 18.21 billion by 2020. And it's expected to reach 22 billion wireless devices globally by 2021. And this also provides us huge opportunity that we have large numbers of sensing devices. And these devices like mobile phones, sensors, radars, UAVs and drones, and automatic weather stations, etc., can provide information which can really help in strengthening our multi-hazard preparedness and response. The network latency between sensors in mobile phones and wearable devices are actually able to connect surveillance cameras, embedded sensors in mobile phones, routers, and other hardware interfaces. And can we have the opportunity of looking at implementing various applications on mobile phones and readers and tablets, which can help in designing software applications and generic software architecture with a central management function that resides in the cloud, data processing element, which can actually place the fog infrastructure and the sensing component on the user's device. And these are all possibilities which are actually currently being made available. And we see that edge computing or fog computing is becoming more popular, especially in places where we do not have internet access. So data and image capture through survey questionnaires on mobile applications, which can collect information from disaster affected communities, even when they do not have internet access. And these data and images can be uploaded to the server on the cloud when the device reaches a location with Wi-Fi or internet access. And this, we see that a lot of crowdsourced information gathering is possible. And this was actually made very popular after the Haiti earthquake in 2010, when a lot of crowdsourced information gathering and also image capture by mobile phones were actually helping in understanding the earthquake damage in Haiti. Fog-based services can be tapped by dedicated vehicles which can travel to remote locations and access data from sensing devices and upload them to the cloud platform. And crowdsourced data gathering and data curating has become increasingly popular through shared tasks by multidisciplinary professionals in remote and distant locations. And this, we were also seeing that during the global pandemic, there were a lot of crowdsourced information gathering by multidisciplinary professionals. And Georgia Tech research teams have been working on social sensing solutions, applying edge computing or fog computing to empower local communities to access distributed computing solutions in disaster-prone areas. Google, and if you look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and blockchain applications, Google's AI-based flood forecasting system, which was recently introduced in India, titled Google Flood Forecasting Initiative, uses satellite imageries for analyzing potential flood risk and for sensing flood alerts and warnings to communities in flood-prone localities in Bihar. And low payload drones with cameras can actually reduce exposure to avoidable danger and injury for many professionals, including insurance claim surveyors, humanitarian assistance workers, and risk assessment engineers. And drone surveys are cost efficient and can provide unique viewing angles that may not be possible by helicopters. And we have seen that even during the wildfires in California, drones were used to capture the images and also help first responders from the forest department and also from the fire and emergency services. And robots were used during the search and rescue operations in the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001 to locate trapped victims under the collapse structure. And machine learning ML for predictive analytics modeling by monitoring water levels in the rivers, rainfall patterns, course of the rivers, demographics in the catchment areas and riverbanks, etc., are also now becoming increasingly popular. If you really look at the big data analytics and Internet of Things applications, we see that the data from satellite imageries, remote sensing, cadastral maps, digital elevation models, etc., can help provide in accessing disaster impact and assessing disaster impact in disaster affected areas. And analysis of socioeconomic and demographic data can help in identifying risk, vulnerability, and exposure to weaker sections of the society, like elderly citizens, palliative care patients, people with disabilities, etc. Open data efforts by the World Bank, UN, and multilateral and bilateral donors have helped in several good governance initiatives by national and provincial governments. And in the US, agencies like FEMA, NASA, NOAA, and federal enforcement agencies are using sensor data and LoRa devices, which are long-range, low-power wireless devices, and wireless radio frequency and satellite imagery to monitor the localities prone to hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis, etc. And IoT networks of weather-based stations in the Caribbean provide early warning alerts on hurricanes and tropical storms. And sensors on trees in drought situations can monitor the risk of forest fires. And these are all possibilities which are now happening. And we need to really understand how we can take this forward by sharing the good practices from countries and also from members of the international networks like TIEMS. If you look at robotics and embedded systems and drones, we see that in Mexico, Microsoft Azure supports Sky Alert, a mobile app, standalone devices, and an IoT solution to provide alerts to citizens up to 2 minutes before an earthquake can happen. And persistent scatter interferometry using SAR, which is synthetic aperture radars, is also called PSINSAR, can provide the interpretations and analysis of satellite imagery to track deformations in critical infrastructure like power, telecom, dams, airports, flyovers, etc., before, during, and after sudden onset disasters like earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. And we are seeing that PSINSAR applications are being used to look at interpretations of satellite imagery in disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis and also major floods affecting critical infrastructure. We also see that drones can help in reconnaissance, surveillance, damage assessment, detection and extinguishing of wildfires, and assisting in CBRN emergencies like chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive emergencies. And robots can help in search and rescue in disasters, assist in detecting short circuits and origin of fires and extinguish them, and can also assist in responding to CBRN emergencies. And during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, robots helped in non-contact sanitizing and also in COVID management through innovative solutions by startup enterprises. And in India, we are seeing also a lot of IT companies which are actually becoming unicorns by coming up with these kind of applications which are helping the emergency management. If you look at geoinformatics, scenario analysis, and modeling, we find that geoinformatics solutions with spatial and thematic overlays of the geomorphology and hydromorphology of multi-hazard prone areas can help in scenario analysis and modeling to predict the impact of floods, cyclones, hurricanes, tsunamis, etc. And social media data on social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. can be tracked for distress messages and requests for help. And we saw a presentation yesterday which looked at natural language processing also. And these can be tracked also on geoinformatics platforms for providing real-time feedback through interoperable multiple redundancy networks of first responder agencies like fire and emergency management, the National Guards, and also the National Disaster Response Force in India, and several other first responders, including civil defense, home guards, fire and emergency management, the police, etc. And climate change induced hydrometeorological disasters and extreme events can be tracked on geoinformatics platforms, and satellite imageries and remote sensing feeds can be shared with first responder agencies before, during, and after disasters to effectively prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. And crowdsourced efforts by multidisciplinary professionals using geoinformatics solutions, scenario analysis, and modeling can help as force multipliers for saving lives and protecting livelihoods. And we find that the international collaboration is the road ahead for sharing the good practices. And so we find that there is a huge opportunity and potential for teams, the country chapters, which are already there in many countries. And we look forward to more participation and greater involvement and engagement of multiple stakeholder groups in teams in the activities. There's a greater need for international collaborations to bring multidisciplinary professionals to search for solutions to address the pressing challenges facing humanity. And we have also seen that the IPCC report was mentioned as Code Red for Humanity by Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN. And COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the fragility of human lives and the threat to livelihoods because of the inadequate access to healthcare and the inability to preempt the outbreak of such unforeseen shocks and prepare effectively through anticipatory governance. And UNDRR's global platforms for disaster risk reduction and the regional platforms have been bringing together humanitarian assistance practitioners from around the world to share experiences, best practices, and work collaboratively in replicating solutions to save lives and protect livelihoods. And I have also been participating in the eYantra initiative of IIT Bombay, which brings together students of engineering and educational institutions like engineering colleges in India and abroad to identify problems and design solutions. So we actually feel that design thinking and systems thinking is going to really help us in emergency management. And we are seeing a lot of innovations in the work of many organizations. And we see that also in teams working collaboratively with many agencies, many institutions in the Horizon 20 and also in the EU, where we are also participating in Impetus and many other projects. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Dr. Roman. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Menon. Much appreciated. Thank you for doing really well on time. That was a really exciting and really comprehensive, well-executed presentation. Thank you. I would like to remind the audience that if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the QA box that you find at the bottom of your Zoom screens, or alternatively, you can pop them into the chat. So Professor Menon, thank you very much. I would like to invite Dr. Didier Soto, who is our next speaker, to join us. Thank you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I will quickly just do the introductions and after that hand over the floor to Dr. Soto. Okay, Dr. Didier Soto joined RESALLIENCE in 2019 as a climate resilience and GIS project manager. His background, he is a geographer and a climatologist by training. Dr. Soto holds a PhD in geography and planning from the University of Jean Moulin in Lyon, France. Within the RESALLIENCE team, Didier is responsible for diagnosing infrastructure vulnerability and various types of other vulnerabilities in the territories that are impacted by climate hazards. Further to this, Dr. Soto is involved in the development of digital platforms for monitoring climate hazards and to monitor and evaluate performance in the areas of infrastructure resilience. Finally, Dr. Soto oversees the modeling of heat island effect and the impacts of this effect on health and economy at various GIS and geographical scale. And without that, and with further ado, I hand over the floor to Dr. Soto. You have 25 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Didier Soto, project manager at Resalience, and I will lead this presentation on the Resilience Performance Assessment Tool, RPA, an innovative solution developed by Resalience to measure the balance between adaptation and mitigation investments for infrastructures and territories. This innovation takes place in a context where infrastructures and their territories are not or no longer adapted to the current and future impacts of climate change, as you can see here with these pictures of floodings or wildfires hitting infrastructures and territories. If the cost of investing in resilient infrastructures is still a break, the cost of the inaction is higher than the cost of the prevention and represents more than 20% of the global GDP. To face and answer these issues, Resalience is a design office which has been specifically created to dedicate its action to climate change adaptation and to provide innovative solutions for customers, thanks to our expertise in terms of space and climate data, as well as in buildings and infrastructure. We developed an integrated approach coming from the characterization of climate hazards to the quantification of their impacts and their economic, environmental, and social consequences for the infrastructures and their surrounding territories. Our solution, as I will present in the next slide, helps to assess the cost of investments in terms of investment cost, CAPEX, operational cost, OPEX, in compliance with the multi-parametric insurances standards and the current and future norms, specifically in the building and construction, versus the cost of inaction. And we work through different geographies worldwide. The innovative solution we developed is a resilience performance assessment tool that we also named RPA. And this presentation will focus on the application of the RPA on a specific area in the Caribbean, the Dominica Island, which has been hardly hit by the successive paths of Tropical Storm Erika in 2015 and Hurricane Maria in 2017, which causes damages to more than 80% of the island buildings. The resilience performance assessment has been developed to help local deciders anticipating and prioritizing CAPEX, OPEX to prevent current and future climate risks. Indeed, there is a strong need to adapt in an holistic way the infrastructures and territories to guarantee the security of citizens, workers, and users, and to ensure the continuity of services provided by infrastructures. However, we know that adaptation has a cost in terms of investment, whose depreciation is difficult to quantify at short, medium, or long term in the context of uncertainty, not on the occurrence of climate change impacts, but rather on their intensity, length, and spatial onset. That is why the Resilience Performance Assessment tool brings added values to deciders in terms of anticipating climate change issues. We create a dedicated visualization tool. I will show you in a video in the next slide. This is an hypervisor, which allows an anticipation of the spatial impacts of climate risks, which could integrate a warning system fitting to different scenarios and periods. This hypervisor is completed by an analytical dashboard to calculate the investment's cost calculation versus the cost of the inaction. This dashboard relies on a set of specifications addressed to a single customer following its activity and geography. The resilience performance assessments highlights and tries to answer the need to face the expectation of an overall and holistic approach to tackle climate change issues from a monitoring approach to capacity building contents furniture. The resilience performance assessments refers to the most recent and relevant scientific approaches to characterize climate change impacts. In the Dominica, future impacts here in terms of maximal wind speed in 2050 have been modeled. We applied a dynamical and statistical downscaling methodology to offer a downscaling approach from a 100-kilometer resolution mesh to 1 kilometer resolution of analysis. We can then spatialize where future risk will occur. In this case, we can predict that Dominica will be concerned by amplified mean and maximum wind velocity in the next decades, mainly in the north of the island, as you can see in red on this picture. We also develop multi-hazard approaches to anticipate complex risks, such as hurricanes. If you remind what I said previously, Dominica has been hit by 2 hurricanes, and we could ask how the next one will affect and strike the territory. To answer this question, we combine the effects of single hazard exposure values, for example, the wind, the river wind floods, the flash floods, the storm surge that occurs during an hurricane, through statistical approaches and fuzzified methods. It allows to better consider their territorial context, providing new exposure maps to prevent the risks and adapt the building's construction, for example. The resilience performance assessment integrates the result of scientific advances in assessing the territorial vulnerability. Here we use a principal component analysis methodology to quantify the vulnerability of infrastructures and territory. It relies on the spatialization and the quantification and qualification of specific assets, such as the residential buildings, the economic buildings, the transport infrastructures, the networks. We report the spatialization of each asset from different kinds of sources, and we evaluate their role in terms of aggravating or mitigating risks. Here you have specific arrows indicating their roles, and we aggregate each statistical values, which weight the role of each component, each asset, in terms of quantifying the territorial vulnerability. All this information are integrated into an hypervisor and is linked to turnkey dashboards, which will help stakeholders and which are currently helping stakeholders to prioritize adaptation and mitigation strategies. The viewing choices and the content is personalized for each project. In the Dominican context, the objectives of the resilience performance assessment was to classify the most relevant and urgent projects to be funded to enhance the resilience of the island and reach the sustainable development goals. Here you will have a video that is showing one side of the resilience performance assessment, the hypervisor, which is applied to the Dominican context. Several layers can be shown. Here, for example, the ground occupation. You have also information of hazard exposures in a 3D viewing format. Here's the river wind flooding. Here's the landslides. We also integrated all the elements I previously presented, such as the multi-hazard exposure map. And you have also the vulnerability map, which relies on a principal component analysis. All these layers are brought to the viewing of stakeholders, and they could implement specific infrastructures, such as the electric network, the current electric networks in red, and the extension of this network in other colors, It allows anticipating the future risk this electric network will face in terms of climate risks. And then you could navigate from one point to another and address specific projects that are currently planned or existing to enhance the resilience of the Dominica. And when you click on a specific flag, you have information on how these projects is compliant with national and international goals to enhance resilience. In this second video, you can show the other side of the resilience performance assessment, the analytic table to assist adaptation strategies at different scales. All the existing projects have been listed and evaluated through a multi-criteria analysis involving several parameters, such as revenue streams, the promotion of nature-based solutions, or the compliance with the Sustainable Development Goals. Then you can go to dashboard functions, as you can see here. If I want to choose projects that are currently planned or will be planned, which are impacting the resilience with and which in these projects allowing high revenue streams, I specify all these elements in this dashboard, and then you have the possibility to visualize the different projects and to choose the 5 or 10 top projects according to the choice you made previously. You have the information about their rating and how an investor or local public stakeholders could have an information on these projects that will impact on the long term the resilience of a territory. To conclude, the resilience performance assessment is an innovative solution, an integrated solution addressing climate change and mitigation issues in investment policy statements. It is composed of 2 tools, a GIS-based hypervisor and an analytical dashboard. The resilience performance assessment is aimed for infrastructures, buildings, and territories. It can be a support for applying adaptation tools and metrics, and is currently applied by different customers following different domains, infrastructures of transport infrastructures, logistics, risk management at a national scale, and also for managing the current and future risk for industrial facilities. Thank you very much for your attention, and I bring in the last slides some references to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soto. And we're running quite well and a little bit ahead of time. There is one question which is for the previous speaker, so we will take it after the last presentation of this session, which will follow shortly. Are there any questions for Dr. Soto before we move on? Please feel free to type them into the chat or into the QA box. Before we continue, I've got a question, Dr. Soto.
Yep.
Besides, you mentioned the island nation of Dominica as the one of the case studies in your presentation, correct?
Yeah.
I just wanted to find out if you tested the system at countries at a larger scale of population and possibly something that's more integrated into maybe a continental system like the EU or something similar?
Not yet. We developed one aspect of the resilience performance assessments on buildings on the overall surface of France for more than 5,000 of buildings. But for an overall territory, it needs to develop an integrated approach, and we try this on pilot projects. Dominica is one of the pilot projects, but we have the ambition to replicate it to more extensive countries, and this is one of the development points that we aim to develop in the next year.
Okay, thank you. Professor Vinod, we've got a question for you, so please stick around. Thank you very much, Dr. Soto. Are there any questions for Dr. Soto? If not, then Dr. Soto, thank you very much for your presentation. Since we're running a little bit ahead of time, I will take the question for Professor Menon from the previous speaker slot. The question says, it's from Per Eriksson. To what extent do you, Professor Menon, think that the responsibility for crisis management efforts or parts of the crisis management efforts will move from governments to, for instance, big tech firms in the future? And how will this affect accountability?
That's a very good question. In fact, actually, I think, the primary responsibility will rest with the government. However, there is a need for making sure that governance should actually be the responsibility of the corporates and also of the community. So there is going to be a lot more of corporate governance and civil governance, civil society governance, which we will be seeing in the coming years. And the UN has linked very closely with the corporate sector. And so there is a platform called ARISE, which is looking at the resilience of the corporate sector. And there are many countries which are looking also at corporate social responsibility in a big way. So I think there is going to be multi-stakeholder engagement whereby the governments will work very closely with the corporate sector to find solutions, because we would need also a lot more of resources, both from the financial resources as well as technological resources coming from the corporate sector, which will really help in finding solutions through more informed decision making, better design thinking and systems thinking, by involving communities, by involving corporate sector entities in finding solutions for disaster management. And accountability will naturally improve. And we are seeing also ESG, which is environmental and social governance funding, which is coming in a very big way through UNEP. And the 2021-2031 is the UN decade for ecosystem restoration. So we will see a lot more of multi-stakeholder engagement in nature-based solutions, like what was shown by Dr. Soto. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Menon. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any further questions? It's a good point that comes up on the accountability, because I saw on the South African news this morning that a big social network is being sued for quite a sizable amount of money for some of the online content that they didn't manage to police and that might have contributed to violence against some ethnic minorities in Southeast Asia, starting back, I think, about 2017. So we will see how that plays out. It is also very difficult, I think, to maintain the current levels of and current definition of accountability, because a lot of the crises and emergencies and pandemics like COVID have shown us are actually becoming transboundary. So the accountability, I think, will come up more and more. I think it will also be one of the topics that will be strongly discussed at the ongoing WHO conference on the ethics of vaccine availability, which I think started sometime in the last couple of days. Okay. Thank you very much to our first two speakers. I see that our our last speakers for this time slot are for this session are ready. So I will go ahead and do the introductions, and after that hand over. So if you check the program, our next speakers join us from Poland. There are two authors on this paper. First one is Jakub Ryzenko, who is an expert in space policy, international cooperation in space activities, the use of satellite technologies for security and systems engineering. Between 2004 and 2008, Dr. Ryzenko was the head of the Polish Space Office. Since then, he has been actively involved in promotion of space applications in the country of Poland. He has also served in the role of a space policy advisor to the Ministry of Economy of the Polish government. He has also served as an expert during the Polish presidency of the European Union, and this was with relations to the field of the use of modern technology and satellite application in civil security. Furthermore, between 2011 and 2013, Dr. Ryzenko was involved in the accession of Poland to the European Space Agency. He has been actively involved in activities that are related to supporting the use of modern technologies in the areas and field of security. Finally, Dr. Ryzenko has been involved in initiating several projects aimed at operational use of satellite technologies for rescue services and crisis management. Since 2011, he's been the head of the Crisis Information Center, SRC. In addition to Dr. Ryzenko, we've got Dr. Kobierzecka, who is a graduate in international relations at the University of Warsaw with the specialization in space policy, international cooperation with focus on space activities, and relation between the European Union and the European Space Agency. She has actively participated in Poland's accession negotiations to the European Space Agency, and she has represented Poland in the work of this organization. She's a co-author and editor of the Polish space strategy, which was adopted by the government of Poland in January of 2017. And she's currently focusing on supporting the implementation of the new satellite technology and techniques in the public administration field in the country of Poland. And without further ado, I hand over to Jakub and Anna to take over for the next time slot. You've got 25 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking the organizers for the chance to share our experiences of using drones and manned aviation in the crisis operations on the basis of Forest 2021 State Fire Service exercise. Okay, the word exercise should be here in the title of our presentation. Next, please. Let me start by a very, very brief introduction of our institution. We represent Space Research Center of Polish Academy of Sciences. This institute was founded in 1977 as part of the Polish Academy of Sciences, and this is the only R&D institution in Poland which is fully devoted to space research. But in the past years, our capacities and scientific interests have expanded, and now they include also UAV, satellite, and geoinformatics support for civil protection authorities. And as it was mentioned during the introduction, we have a dedicated structure for those purposes, which is called Crisis Information Center, which we have the pleasure to represent. We have been involved in crisis management activities since 2005. Our specialty is optimization of information flow between technology providers and end users from safety and security area to improve efficiency of crisis management and rescue activities. Our particular focus is geoinformation. Geoinformation based on both satellite Earth observation and data from unmanned aerial vehicles. We support user-driven and service-oriented approach. We offer best practices, elaboration and evaluation, and we try to tailor the technical solutions to the end user needs, end users from security and safety area needs. Next, please. So the Crisis Information Center is focused on providing the right information for the right people and at the right time. And I could add 3 more points to that slide, actually. The information has to be provided in the right form, meaning user-friendly form. And that might sometimes be a challenge, especially for, let's say, scientific establishments. Sometimes the things that are pretty obvious for scientists are not so obvious for crisis management practitioners. And our role is to be a bridge between those 2 words. Information has to be also based on the right sources and right amounts of information. So it's not the point to overflow the end user, the practitioner, with the data coming from all over the world. He has to get exactly the amount of information that he needs during a particular phase of crisis management information and nothing more. So on the one side, we need to provide them with the sufficient amount of information, but avoid information overload. And of course, there are security concerns, but also infrastructure constraints. So the information has to be provided taking into account what are the limitations of the infrastructure, for instance, internet access, and also to avoid, let's say, security leaks and getting the information outside of the correct circle of people. So skip that one. Maybe let me focus on the state forest exercise, Forest 2021. That was the first and largest field exercise after the COVID-19 pandemic. It took place at the end of August in the northern part of Poland, with participation of almost 500 firemen and 150 vehicles. And the scenario of the exercise was a large-scale and long-term forest fire, difficult to extinguish due to unfavorable environmental conditions. But the forest fire was also a threat to critical infrastructure, several groups of tourists and forest workers. So the end result was the need to conduct many different activities at the same time. So search and rescue, providing on-site medical assistance, and of course continue to fight the actual fire. We added a dedicated aviation component to this exercise. The challenges that we faced were twofold. First of all, how to enable the use of UAVs and manned aircraft at the same time, how to coordinate the operations to avoid possible collisions or threats, and also how to optimize the use of UAVs for continuous monitoring of situation on the ground. The exercise was conducted using a center of expertise approach, and let me explain what it is. So a couple of years ago, we took part in a Driver Plus project. Driver is an acronym for Driving Innovation in Crisis Management for European Resilience. During this project, we developed so-called trial guidance methodology. The challenge of actually implementing innovative solutions in crisis management is not so much the technology, but how to integrate new technologies and new solutions into the operational practices of crisis management practitioners. This is not so easy as it may sound. Sometimes you may have a brilliant technology solution, but the people do not know how to use it. And if you try to introduce such a solution too early or without proper preparation, that you may end up with counterproductive results, and you may actually decrease the efficiency of crisis management activities instead of increasing that. So we use so-called trials. We prepare and conduct a demonstration or an exercise in line with pre-prepared scenario, during which we do not evaluate the efficiency of personnel, but the efficiency of solution. And we focus on the ways to improve the uptake of these particular solutions by the user. In the case of Forest 2021, the challenge was to create the specific model for air traffic organization and coordination between manned aviation and UAVs capabilities used during the exercise. And to give us more details about the actual exercise and the conclusions and recommendations stemming from that, I will hand over to Jakub.
Thank you very much. And indeed, UAVs are one of the technologies which require this kind of trialing. We know they can give us a lot of information. They can give us a lot of support for decisions during crisis operations, but it's not easy to implement them operationally. And we have experienced this last year in Poland. You see a picture here of the large Biebrza National Park fire, wildfire, where UAVs could not be could not be used at all on the strategic level and in a limited scope on a tactical level, because of the fact that the human operated aviation was in action. They were actively conducting the firefighting flights. So we wanted to really focus on identifying the way how to use both UAVs and the human-operated aviation at the same time, and also to benefit from the strategic overview provided by UAVs, exactly as Anna said, and using this trial philosophy. So what we were really doing, we were trying to generate a specific concept of layered organization of airspace, when you have the upper layer reserved for the strategic UAVs, those which are orbiting above the human-operated aviation, and this upper level layer was dedicated only to the UAVs. Then you had a normal activities of the human operation of the manned aviation, but with a specific team, with a dedicated team of air controllers coordinating the flights. And then we have also the UAV flights at the lower level. So that was the philosophy. And what really happened during the exercise, during this trial, we were building the structure where the conduct of such operations can be safe. So we had a restricted airspace volume, in reality established before, because we wanted to minimize the disturbance for a normal aviation, but we played also the establishment of such a restricted airspace volume in emergency mode. This was played during the exercise, so all the information were exchanged between the commanders on the ground and the air navigation authorities. But what was very important, we also designed and implemented a specific air operations coordinator role. So the topic of aviation use in the whole exercise, in the whole operation, has its own owner. in some countries in Europe, there are such structures. For Poland, it's an innovation. It's something which is only now implemented. And we used this as a combination of the fire service personnel and the air traffic controllers team supporting them. Then we were able to provide a continuous coordination of both the human-operated aircraft and the UAV flights. And the UAVs at the strategic level, the upper layer, they were really able to provide in a continuous way the stream of information, which could be used both for strategic and tactical level. I like very much the picture on the bottom right side of this slide. When you see the commander leading part of the exercise, who really moved himself to a place where we could see the situation from the camera of UAVs, because it was easier for him to take decisions being there and seeing the situation. It was a very real proof how useful the continuous monitoring can be. But to have such a monitoring, you really need to have the organized airspace, and also you need a very well established procedures to sharing information which you can get from the UAVs. So what were the lessons learned? I think this is the main message which we want to provide here. The first and foremost, if you want to have safe operations of that kind, you need to be able to provide to conduct the airspace management activities, meaning you can define the area which is restricted for flights other than those involved in firefighting activities. It is absolutely critical. Without that, you cannot ensure the safety. So you cannot move your UAVs at the upper level, and you can also always expect that you will have players which are not involved in activities, and they may represent the risk for flight safety. Fortunately, Poland is actually the most advanced country in implementing the IT systems for UAV UAV flights coordination, and we've been working with this system as well. So we had communication with both the world of the human-operated aviation and the UAVs. And what is also interesting, we used this trial to gather a lot of information how to optimize the IT system, which should be used regularly for supporting crisis operations and use of aviation in crisis operations. Without very specific details, we were able to prove that you can safely conduct both flights with the altitude separation, so this layered organization which I explained, as well as even within one layer, you can ensure that there is a horizontal separation. So the flights are in different locations and there is no risk of collision. That's really what you want to achieve. And this is also really something where the future IT system can be very, very useful. And that's why this kind of exercises can be used to optimize the model of such IT systems. Then we had a lot of lessons regarding the specific organization of this air operations coordinator team, or cell, if you wish. We see it as a minimum 3-person team with the fire service officer in command, understanding the needs and the strategic and also tactical needs of use of UAVs. Then you have the ATM, air traffic management personnel responsible for safe conduct of the flights and actual specific control of those. Even if this is not a fully controlled space area, you are really very close to that. And of course, you need some kind of the support. And finally, you also need a very well-established link between such a team and the staff, the headquarters, which is really leading the firefighting operation or any kind of crisis operation, because there must be a good exchange of information between the normal headquarters and this air operations cell team. That's really something which we are able to do. And as a result, we achieved something which you can see on the video here. We are really able to see the human-operated flights and the drones on the upper and lower level flying at the same time. What is important of this video, you see the firefighting operation from above. This is the video from the UAV, from the drone. You can assess, you can direct the operation, you can assess the results, and in a moment you will even see on the right-hand side the helicopters flying next to the fire. So we had the firefighting operation and the observation helicopters flying together, effectively coordinated by the people. So observation is really something which is which can be very much enhanced and understanding of the situation by the observation from UAVs and the helicopters working together and coordinate. Then the strategy UAVs can really give you a good understanding of the wider situation, and consequently take more appropriate decisions based on a more proper understanding of the ground truth. But what was very important was proper organization of sharing this information and enabling the transfer of such video streams both to the headquarters and to the local commanders in the field. And even those commanders in the field were able to identify what are their needs, and they were giving a specific directions. Okay, show me this, show me that, show me another part. That was something which was very much valuable. And at the same time, we were still able, for most of the time, to conduct also a tactical flights by drones. Tactical, I mean the low level, when the local commander is using his own drone team, UAV team, to provide surveillance or just reconnaissance for himself, for his own operation. And in a summary, I would say that this exercise was a very good proof that the trial philosophy can, and we would say should be used to open, to build the bridge between the technology and the potential which they can give, and the real use of such innovative solution in real safety and security operations. We were able to assess and confirm functionality of the solutions, but also we were able to assess and confirm and optimize the organizational approaches to using those solutions. And finally, we are also able to gather functional requirements for the IT system, for the future IT system, which will be used, which is currently under development and will be used to continuously support such activities. And finally, we also see that this approach is something which should be shared internationally. And I think both about the trial philosophy, but also about the specific solutions which could be designed for the use of UAVs, because this is something which works best if it is standardized. If you have the air traffic management rules for crisis operations organized in a similar manner as the air traffic management in general is similarly organized around the world, at least around Europe. And specifically in Europe, we have the mechanism which is just now launched, actually formally today. It's the knowledge network of the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. And this is something where such philosophy and also the outcomes of such activities should be really shared, and the safety community, civil protection community can really benefit from sharing this through the knowledge network in Europe. Finally, a few conclusions and recommendations regarding the UAVs themselves. We feel that it's really possible to get much more from the UAVs than it is the situation of today. But for that, you need a dedicated approach for organizing air traffic management. It is absolutely critical to establish this, to have procedures and the mechanism to actually organize air traffic activities, because only air traffic to enable firefighting activities by human-operated aircraft, by UAVs, all the time keeping them fully safe. And on the other hand, we see very high value of providing a continuous monitoring of observation, so by drones, by UAVs. But such data should be really provided in an optimized form, meaning that they are available to the right recipients, both in the central headquarters and also in the commanders in the ground, as well as it's quite important to ensure that the people understand what they can expect from them, that they can be really getting most from the source of information that is known to them. And it's just the observation that if you want to have effective use of modern technologies in the current world of civil protection, the trialing, the experimenting, and confirming functionalities, assessing usefulness of such new technologies is a must. And we very much recommend that this trial guidance methodology, which is, by the way, considered by the European Union as one of the success stories of their research and development activities, is something which could be implemented in the world of civil protection. For modern technologies, and UAVs are a very good example of that. Thank you very much. Now, do you have some concluding remarks?
No, I believe everything has been said. We would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yep. Thank you.
Jakub and Anna, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. There was a lot of information to take in and also really well executed study. Congratulations on that. We have one question in the QA box, which is from Per Eriksson, and it goes as follows. How well was the low-level UAV and the main aircraft separated, given that the water bombing takes place at quite low level?
It's a very right question, and it's exactly why we were using the air traffic control team. We were continuous communication between the drone operators, drone pilots flying at the low level, and at the time when the water bombing took place, at this specific area, they were given a command to ground about 5 minutes before the actual conduct of the operation, and only after confirming they landed or they are below the tops of the trees, the green light was given to the pilot that he can proceed the actual approach. And what is also interesting, we were able to move the layers all the time because the clouds were moving down. We were, thanks to the team of the air controllers, we were able to dynamically adjust the layers, the altitudes at which the flights were conducted. So this was a very dynamic mechanism, but because you are operating on the basis that you need a green light to do something, you are safe because someone else confirms, yes, I landed, so you can do, and then they are given a green light to do a water bombing, and then they are given a green light to start again. So that's, I hope, answered the questions.
Thank you very much. is there any follow-up from Per Eriksson, or can we consider the question answered? If there are any follow-up details that maybe would require further discussion, that can be popped in the chat, or another question can be asked in the QA box.
And we will be also very happy to provide more details, also bilaterally, if you wish. We are happy
great.
to share these experiences. Okay,
great. Thank you very much. There is a follow-up question. Per says, I'm happy, thanks for the answer. Great. So thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings the session number 4, Emergency Management Technologies, to a conclusion. All our presenters, thank you very much for taking the time and presenting the results of your work. We hope that this engagement will follow in further developing the projects that you have presented on, and also there is an option to publish full papers either with us the proceedings at the TIEMS level, or we also have 2 publishers that have announced work with us, or that are currently working with us, to provide the ability to publish a special issue journal article if any of the presenters are interested. We have perfectly kept time. It is 11:24 CET. At the moment, we will go into a 20-minute tea break, after which we have the TIEMS AGM, or annual general meeting. We would like to remind everybody that if you have paid up your membership and you are going to participate in the AGM, this meeting for today's session, this session number 4, will close, and a separate Zoom link was provided to everybody by Victoria and Kyle from Capacity Building International, and that link is specifically designated for you to join the AGM. Okay, AGM. So thank you very much. Enjoy the tea, and we will see you in 20 minutes at the AGM, which will run from 11:45 to 1 p.m. CET. Thank you. Goodbye.